Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In case you're new here and you're seeing me for the very first time, please go ahead and introduce yourselves. I'd like to know you and I'd like to meet you. Where in the world are you tuning in from? And to all my returning subscribers, I want to say thank you. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your love and your incredible support today. As you can see from the title, 8 productivity rules, yes, of the top 1%. Yes, we're talking about the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. But first, if you're a Nigerian, I just heard about the passing of our past presidents. May he so rest in peace. And I hope that the current president will do better. So let's just get right into today's business. Please let me know your name and where you are watching from. Where are you tuning in from? And how did you find this link? How did you find my video? Who sent it to you? Let me know in the comments. So today we're going to be going, through how to become the top 1% of the 1% of the 1%. One thing I've realized that successful people have in common is that they're go-getters and they have a lot of, ethics in common, a lot of work ethics in common. But the first one I'm gonna, talk about is relentless self-discipline. Relentless self-discipline. Now we're talking about doing what you should be doing without being told what to do, without even feeling like doing it. You don't have to feel like doing it, but because you need to do it, then it has to be done. So that's one thing I've noticed a lot of successful people have. Now, having a routine is also very important, following a consistent routine. It is not an accident that people like Mark Zuckerberg wears only one outfit, the same color of shirts. I'm not saying he has just one, but he has multiple of the same color of t-shirts, so you can see that this is something that they all have in common. So the fact that they have self-discipline, that actually helps them to think less about what to wear and stuff like that. So one other thing is, remember, they have a routine. So they have, and one thing I've also learned is that they don't only work with time, they work with their energy levels. Yes, they work with their energy levels. So they will not expend so much energy on something that will not yield them, bigger outcome. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining in. Happy Sunday to you too, Jerry, my sister. So I noticed that people, try to conserve their energy. And I was talking to, one of my mommies here in California, and I was telling her about, my workout routine and how I work out in the afternoon in the sun. But of course, I have an umbrella. But she's like, no, do it first thing in the morning. And I told her, in the morning, I don't want to spend my high energy on working on something that doesn't require brain task. Okay, so the topic for today is how to 8 productivity rules of the top 1%. 1% of the 1%. How to get to become 1% of the 1%. What they actually have in common, the most successful people. So I've noticed that they have great work ethics. So that's exactly what we're discussing in today's episode. So like I said, they have relentless self-discipline, and they have a structured daily routine. They have a structured daily routine. And I shared in the beginning of today's episode, I shared that Mark Zuckerberg actually has, he wears a particular color of outfit every day because he doesn't want to bother about what to wear tomorrow, what to wear next tomorrow. So he just chooses one outfit and he's good to go, So, and that's where, also working with your energy levels is something that I noticed somebody else mentioned this thing and somebody I really looked up to, and I'm like, yes, this is something that I also do. So they work with their energy levels. So that's why I said when I wake up in the morning, I will rather work on something that is really brain tasking in the morning than do something that is so easy that doesn't even require stress, right? And I mentioned earlier, so I'm repeating myself because Sarah was asking. So I mentioned earlier that I have a mommy in California here. I have a lot of moms here in California, So, and she was telling me, because what I told her that I work out in the afternoon, that's when I have the time. Actually, it's always very sunny around 1 p.m. At 1 p.m., I'm done with my meetings by 1 p.m. during the week, though. I don't work out on weekends. So I'm done by 1 p.m. I go for my workout 1 to 3. That's when I have the time. And evenings don't work for me and I can't procrastinate. I can't wait till the sun sets before I start working out. I have other things I've lined up to do in the evenings. So she was like, okay, why don't you just work out first thing in the morning when you wake up? I'm like, no. I cannot expend that energy, that's high energy on working, because working out for me requires no brain task, or any brain related activity like that, as it were, and that's why I heard one other successful entrepreneur mentioned it, that he tries to do the most brain tasking, activities when he wakes up, because he needs to utilize that, that energy that he woke up with. And that's something I also do. So it's not just about following routine or just going into a meeting that will take your time and drag all that energy, because there's a particular time, I call it my peak period and off peak period. And I noticed this thing about myself when I was in grad school. I noticed that when I was in grad school, I noticed that there's a particular time of the day that my energy is low. So I noticed that is my off peak period. So work, you can utilize your main tasks, at the point when you have high energy. And it's something that you should know when your own, when you have high energy and when you actually have low energy. When the person mentioned, I'm like, yes, this is so me. So I noticed that, we kind of like have a lot of things in common. So if you want to join the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, you should know when your energy is highest, at the highest level. Then you also need to stay committed to your goals, even when the motivation fades, even when you don't have the motivation to do it. But because you've told yourself it's something that you're really committed to doing, then you have to make it work. Then you have to do it, And if you're learning something, you can't say, oh, because it's not clear, because I don't understand, or because it's not, I thought it was going to be easy. No, nothing good comes easy, So you have to keep at it until you get to know it, until you get, exactly what you're looking for out of it. And I'll also say this: if you want to be successful, you want to join the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, do not sacrifice the permanent on the altar of the temporary. Let me take it again. Do not sacrifice the permanent on the altar of the immediate, or on the altar of the temporary. And this reminds me of one particular lady that I met back in church before I even got married. I met this girl, she's quite young and she's enterprising. And I spoke with her, I asked her, what's up with school? And she said, oh, that she's not thinking about school. Now, honestly, for the first time today, I wish I screamed. I wish I screamed. Maybe it would drive the message. But I just took it like, okay, maybe I should have yelled at her on that day. But I told her, I said, what's up with school? She said, no, that school is gonna do this now, that she wants to go and hustle. And I'm like, you want to go and hustle with zero education? You're gonna cheat yourself at the end of the day. Because education makes all the difference. When you have all the education in the world, you can brand yourself. You can actually, have a strategic positioning. You can position yourself strategically, when you get an education. And I checked her sometime last year, and she's still literally in the same place. Same place I left her how many years ago? 2011, 14 years ago. So a lot of people sacrifice, what they shouldn't for the temporary. People do that a lot, and it's a big mistake. How can you sacrifice your future for just the peanuts that you want? I'm telling you, Sarah, like, it hurts me till this day. I wish I shouted at her. I wish I yelled at her on that day. I wish I told her and I really sat her down and made her my projects that day. She's still there 14 years after. And that's the thing about when you don't grow. When you don't grow, you don't see yourself. It's when you even look in the mirror, you think you're okay, but you're not. You're not growing. There's no growth, nothing. You're just there. And unfortunately, to a very large extent, it affects the kind of people that you surround yourself with. It affects the kind of people that you also meet. And that's why I remember back then there was this girl that is always saying, how do you meet all these top-notch guys? And I'm like, it's because of where you go, the kind of people that you mingle with. I had lots and lots of successful friends at the time. I remember at that time, you meet successful people in class. That was me. That was my own experience. Very successful. I had vice presidents of banks in class, in my class, and we're playing on a playing field, on the same leveling field, at the time. But if you refuse to grow, if you refuse to, you're not bothered about becoming 1% of the 1%, then you're okay. Goes. You just want to settle. I'm not here to settle. I'm a go-getter. I'm very intentional when it comes to my life, my future, my success. No, I don't take it lightly. I don't treat it like one other thing. I'm always very, very intentional. And when I see people, I'm maybe in a gathering and I see people who are laid back and I know, I on immediately I start feeling uneasy and I immediately leave that circle. It's not for me. And I always say this, that if you're the best person in the room, you're the best person, you're in the wrong room. Because trust me, if you remain there, then you'll never grow because you feel like, oh, okay, I'm not bad. But when you leave that zone, trust me, to a better, even people that are, way, way better than you, people who have achieved much more than you, then you are going to be inspired. Last week, my family and I traveled last week, and that's why I didn't go live. I didn't remember to. Did I even remember to put out a notice? I'm sorry about that. So I met a lady. She's, oh my goodness, these are the kind of people I've been talking about. Like, she's 1%. She's 1% of the 1% of the 1%. For sure. She's an entrepreneur. She's got a PhD, and she's talking about having C-suite meetings. I'm like, okay, oh shit, and she's even training them. She's operating from the highest, like, top level. And I could tell when you have a conversation with such people, you could tell that you guys share a lot in common. You have great work ethics, and when you look at these people who don't bother developing themselves, you can tell from the word get go. You can tell that, oh, this person has a lot of work to do. Yes, all of us are still work in progress, no doubt. Even me, I'm still work in progress, but there's a level at which you should be playing. There's a playing field for high flyers, for go-getters, really. And one thing I would say is that you shouldn't treat the most important things like they don't matter. This is something I've realized about very successful people. Very successful people, they don't treat important things lightly. They don't treat it like, this one does not matter. And one other thing I noticed is that we don't take the staircase. We don't take the elevator. A lot of times people don't want to go through the process. People just want to. And today, interestingly, I learned that a lot of graduates now they have baked graduates. A lot of people are now using AI. They are AI-ing their way out of college. And then when they graduate, they are like half illiterates. They are not, they didn't pass through the process. They didn't really go to school. School didn't really even pass through them. So a lot of people want to just take the elevator. They just want to. And interestingly, if you're not careful, if you love taking the elevator route, you keep going the elevator, the way you went up is the same way you can slam down, because you took the elevator route. And when you look at successful people, if you look at Ibukun Awoshika, for example, I always use her as an example because I can relate with her. Now, Ibukun definitely, her father wasn't the owner of First Bank. Her father was not the founder of it, not even the chairman of First Bank, right? But today she rose to the ranks. I'm sure that she started as an ET, maybe as an executive trainee, and then she went from there to, she moved to becoming the BOBE, I don't know what their levels are, became DM, and like that. That's how you learn. But when you go from nowhere to become the CEO, when you become the CEO without passing through the steps, the staircase, as it were, in that context, you probably will not appreciate, you won't value things when they land in your hands. But when you've passed through the process, there's a reason why, we have to crawl before we walk. There's a reason for it. But if you, from nowhere, it takes the grace of God for you to maintain it, in that level, at that level. So people need to understand that life is a process. Life is a process, and you do not need to treat the most important things like they don't matter. Things that actually matter to you. Some people want to I want to skip the learning part. I don't want to learn. Okay, you don't want to learn. How will you grow? You don't want to read books. How will you grow? How will you get better? How are you going to get better than your competitors or the person next to you? People are, you have to assume that it's honestly, and that's something I see even with lots of, tech companies around here. I live in Silicon Valley, and I noticed that all the tech companies are like, I don't want to use the word competing, but they are all growing. They're all learning. They're all trying to outdo the next person, because honestly, it's the jungle out here. If care is not taken, one company's policy or one company's new invention can swallow the other one. Like a company that was high up there yesterday can cease to exist if care is not taken, if you're not constantly growing, if you're not constantly evolving, if you're not constantly building, you are going down the rail. And I always say this too, that the day you stop learning is the day you begin to die. It's not the day you actually get buried or the day they announce that, oh, this person has passed. No, the day you stop learning is the day you begin to die. So that's one habit of the 1% of the 1% of the, they're always learning. They're always constantly learning, and I always say this as well. I mean, everything is not money. Everything is not money. There are times that you really need to take 10 steps back so that you can take 1 million steps forward. You have to take those steps, take your time to learn, unlearn, relearn, and get better every single day. And a lot of people want to skip that, they want to skip that step, or they want to get somebody to go and do it. No, you don't want people to kick you out of business. There have been instances where an employee will take over a company. I tell you. In fact, this one even happened right in my very before. If you permit me to use that language. There was this chairman of a company. He owned I think 60 something percent of the shares of a company. And then he didn't, I think at some point he was selling it, he was selling off, and one of his employees was buying. He bought 5%. He didn't notice, and then he bought 10%. And then the next he bought 51% shares of the company, and the company became his employee's company. So you have to be 10 steps ahead every single time. You just have to be. You cannot skip that staircase. You cannot skip the process. You have to still pass through the process. And like I said, as a success, if you want to be successful, you want to join the 1% of the 1%, lifelong learning should be part of you. And intellectual growth should be a part and parcel. It should be a permanent part of you. You should always buy books. You should always read books. And there's something that I was doing at some point at home. I did it again yesterday and it works. So one thing I was doing for my kids was I was putting books everywhere they would see it. And then when they wake up in the morning and they do what they need to do, they will see the book and pick the book and they will read. So, if it means you buying books, you put it beside your bed, you see it every day. This book is calling you, you are calling it, and you will see another book and buy. And then you know that you have to read this book because you bought that book. You have to create time to read this book. Lifelong learning is something that you need to imbibe. If you really want to join the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, you need to read daily. You need to read books on business, books on psychology, books on finance, even Bible. Honestly, and I would say to myself, even if I'm not, I'm not taking pride in anything at all this year, I'm going to take pride in the fact that I've been consistently reading my Bible every day, and I'm becoming a changed person. And there are lots of stories, a lot of inferences that I'm beginning to read in the Bible that I've never heard about, that I never saw. I never knew, oh, wow, this thing happened. Oh, before this incident happened. So, and this would also help me, just in case I go somewhere and somebody is telling me stuff from the Bible and it's not true. I can say, no, it did not happen like that. So when you read, you get better. And even spiritually, when you read the Bible, you even get smarter and wiser as well. So please try to read every single day, read daily. And those are the books I recommend, reading leadership books, reading finance books, psychology books, and even the Bible or the Quran, as the case may be. And you also need to stay informed. You need to stay informed about global events. And of course, depending on where, what sector of the economy you work, industry trends. You can also, make sure that you stay informed so that, you're not hearing about something that is happening in your industry 2 years down the line. They've left you behind. They've moved on and left you behind. And if you don't want to be left behind, you have to continuously seek mentorship as well as professional development. If it means, see, I'm not too old to go back to school. Never. I was telling myself recently, oh, Canada visa. Oh, Oyinda, thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate you. It was such a nice meeting we had this morning. Is it Mtie? I'm trying to pronounce your name. Sarah, somebody is asking you a question, Sarah. Okay, so That's pretty much, about it. You have to continuously seek mentorship, and honestly, when you have a mentor, you're not likely gonna miss your way. You're not likely gonna, make mistakes, costly mistakes that will really set you, years back. So you wanna continuously, ask questions from people who have been there, done that, so that they can guide you, along the way as well. Now, this is also something I noticed. This was something I even noticed a long time when I was still a kid. I noticed that a lot of billionaires have multiple sources of income. So it's not just one. You have this business here, you have that business here. And if you look at, I don't know if you've studied a lot of multi-billionaires, they have a lot of, they have different investment portfolios. Some people do, they're into shipping, they're into airline, they're also into water, they're also into different kinds of businesses. So please be open-minded. Be open-minded. You just never know. And sometimes you could have a downtime for a particular kind of business. And while that business is, slow at that time of the year, the other businesses can pick up and sustain, the other streams of income that you have. So mastering your finances is something that is also very important. And like I said, building multiple streams of income is something I cannot even overemphasize. You also need to understand wealth building principles. You need to understand long-term financial planning. These are things that are, I see a lot of 1% of the 1%, the successful people, they do it as well. Now let's go to high value networking. High value networking. You need to surround. I know this is hard, especially when you're coming from a place where you've passed through certain things and you're looking up and up and up, and the people that you find yourself surrounded by they're not ambitious, they're laid back, and you need to really do a lot of high value networking. You need to surround yourself with very successful, ambitious people, people who are ambitious, people that you can learn from. And I said it earlier that if you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. So you should learn to, communicate effectively and also command respect. How do you command respect? The way you position yourself would, make people, it will give people a perspective of, who you are and what you stand for. That's about it. Now you also need to master emotional intelligence: when to speak, how to act, when to talk, how to control emotions. In fact, the one I learned from the lady I talked about earlier, the lady that has a business I said I met last week during our vacation, she said, and I'm kind of like trying to absorb it. She said, you have to control your emotions. You have to not show any emotion. I'm like, oh God. And she's Nigerian, by the way. And she was saying, where we come from, when we are happy, they know. When you are sad, they know. But this time, it's a poker face thingy. They don't know whether you're angry, they don't know whether you're sad. And that's why if those successful people, they know how to play. They know how to play ball. Yes, they know how to play ball. And that's why when you hear that a certain artist and another artist are fighting, it's a lie. Oh. It's just the fans that think they are fighting. Oh. They are friends behind closed doors. So they've learned to master the mastery of their emotions. They've learned how to master their own emotions. You don't bring those emotions to business. And I'm trying. There are some people who, for whatever reasons, maybe they do, they're into a kind of business, and because they're not, at peace with somebody, and when the person wants to patronize the business, they're like, no, I'm not selling to you, I'm not happy with you, I'm not saying, no. You have to learn how to master your own emotions. Emotional intelligence is very important. You need to set your emotions aside and, treat business as it should, as it were, so you need to also read people well. You need to, learn how to navigate social dynamics. Yes, you need to understand people's culture, and all of that. I learned back in grad school that in Dubai, on Fridays, they don't go to work on Fridays. Yes, Fridays are like their Sundays. The way we treat Sundays in most part of the world, like in Christian, predominantly Christian dominated societies, where nobody, like I mean, stores are open on Sundays here in the United States, right? Basic stores, but normally normal, workplaces, they typically will not work on Sundays, well, on Fridays. For them in Dubai, they don't work on Fridays. And as a matter of fact, by I think 1 p.m. they also close. So I was doing a case study at the time about IKEA. I didn't even know that IKEA was everywhere in the world. IKEA in Dubai, and how IKEA had to adapt to closing at 1 p.m. They close at certain times of the day just to accommodate people that are going to pray. So understanding and not saying, oh, I'm a Christian, I don't care, it doesn't matter. No, you work, you are there in that terrain to make money. You're there to do business. You need to understand the culture, the people, and how they do things. So that is also something that one has to be open. You need to be open to it, and then you also need to build strong relationships. Yes, through empathy as well as effective communication. Not everything is money. I always say this, in as much as, yes, I'm in business to make money, not everything is money. There's certain things that I do, there's certain clients that I have, and it's a personal thing here, and it's due to my own experience. There's some clients, I've had aggrieved clients before, back in grad school, where, when they complain about something, I give them a refund and I still do the service for them for free. I do it. I do it. Why? Because according to research, an aggrieved clients will tell 11 more people not to patronize your business, but a happy client is likely going to tell 3 people. You do the maths. So you don't want you don't want negative publicity for your business, and because of that, you need to do everything within your power to make your clients happy. You need to do everything for people who really understand what customer success is. What customer success is, not even customer relationship, customer success. When we talk about customer success, we're talking about making the client happy, not managing the clients. Managing the clients means that, oh, okay, you've broken their hearts, they're angry. But customer success is like getting it right the first time. They walk into your establishment, or they walk into your company or your office, and they are smiling from the door all the way back home. So customer success is ensuring that you make them smile, you wow them, you treat them right, and make them feel like they're the only customers that you have. And people need to understand that when I go to certain establishments and I don't get good treatments, I'm like, oh, it's not your fault. I'm sure you're not the owner of this establishment. If you were, then you'll understand the value of one customer. Customers are the backbone of every business. Without customers, your business is dead. Your business does not even exist. It doesn't stand a chance. And when you are killing your clients, like you're killing the business, then before you know it, that business will cease to exist. And because you don't want that to happen, then you have to treat your customers right. So customer success is very, very, very important. Personal branding is also something I've noticed. Yes, personal branding is very, very important. What are you known for? Yes. What are you? How are you viewed? What kind of appearance? How do you appear in public? And then you also need to have a strong online presence, and you need to build credibility, and you need to demonstrate that you know your onions, you know what you're doing. If there was something I learned in, because I also went briefly to a fashion school in San Francisco, but I ended up leaving because it was at that time I got my admissions for my master's degree in business. So I went to the fashion school briefly, and one of the classes that I attended, the lady talked about knowing the process, the entire process. You want to become a fashion designer, you want to open your own outfit, then you need to know the entire process, production process, as the owner of that business. Why? Because if maybe you hire different people, maybe you have 10 employees, and each of them perform different tasks. You must know every single task. You must know how to perform every single task. Yes, that your business entails. Because if you lose one of those employees for whatever reasons, whether due to unexpected contingencies, or maybe they just want to quit, you are able to still move on. Your life does not depend on them. And this is the reason why there are some people who are so they're so dependent on their employees that if anything happens, and these employees can actually wake up one day and call it quits, and the goal is to actually increase their salary, triple their salary or quadruple their salary. And then because you don't have any choice, because you don't know how to do it, you start begging them, please, okay, I will pay. That way you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. Don't do that. You need to know the entire process yourself. This is something I learned even back in fashion school. I learned that you need to understand how to sew, how to do every single process. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it yourself. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will end up doing it. But the whole idea is this: in case anyone decides to quit on you, you can move on. Your life does not come to a standstill. Even though I have editors, and I don't want to edit again. It's too much work, but I mean, if any of them decides to quit, I can edit my videos, right? I can edit that one video and then hire somebody overnight, because honestly, I'm so done with editing. It's not my thing anymore. So it's just something I discovered about these 1% of the 1%. They know the business, they know everything about the business, the entire process, and you need to know the entire process too. You run a business, you're planning to start your business. Please make sure that you know the entire process. In case something happens, you get an order, you have to do something in the midnight, there's no time to call anyone to sort it out, you can go and do it yourself. And she was telling me that at the time, I think she was working with Versace, and she also had her own, no, Versace at the time. So it was Versace. So she told me they visited, I think, 4 countries in 3 days or something like that. And they were expected to wear, I think, just black, while flying on air. And then one day something happened, and this guy, I think it's Gianni himself, went and was sewing. The moment his staff saw him sewing by himself, they had a high level of respect for him, because now he can live without them. Not that he's firing them or anything, but because they saw that he also knows his onions. And when he's saying, I need you guys to fix this part of this outfit, I need to fix this part, Ms. Mo. Hey, is that Moji? Moji, thanks for joining your Mikilo Shele. So you need to know the entire process. You need to know the entire process for real, so that if anything happens, you're able to still stand strong. And losing one employee will not crumble your business. That's something I also learned about. Now let's talk about ruthless time management. Ruthless time management. So first thing you should do is to prioritize high impact activities when you wake up in the morning. Prioritize high impact activities and eliminate distractions. Some time ago, back when I was in grad school, I shared that there were times, because at the time there was no scheduling feature. So at that time, I would publish Instagram content, and then I would delete Instagram app on my phone. Yes, I would delete Instagram app on my phone. Okay. Only that when I said my driver got skin halfway on the channel, I had to take it back. Thank you. You see what I'm talking about? Imagine if you had to this almost happened to me. Imagine if this had to happen to you and you don't know how to drive. It would be a disaster. I remember back then, back in Diamond Bank, when in the evening my driver comes to pick me up, and he was always saying something, and then I hadn't gotten my driver's license at the time, so he would say, auntie, one day I will just not come and pick you up at home. I thought he was joking. I lived on the mainland and my office was on the island, and they were like, one day I'll not pick. I'm like, what do you mean? you know he said it continuously. Then one morning, 5 a.m., usually comes to my house by 5 a.m. to pick me up, and he did not show up. I waited till 5:30, he didn't show up. And then I went downstairs. Oh, he got sick. Are you serious? Oh my goodness, that was hard. You know? So he didn't show up at all, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Okay, I know where he lives. And then I drove to where he. So when I got to the gate, I was like, why don't I just go to work? And that's how I drove to work. And that's how he lost his job. That's how he lost his job, because he has been threatening me, that one day he would just not come and pick me up. One day he will not come and pick me up. I had to go on Third Mainland Bridge for the first time myself, and I didn't die. Oh, but that same day I brought myself home, and that was it. So it's always good to, have proper knowledge of how to, the processes, even when you hire people. Like I said, you need to prioritize high impact activities, things that bring you, that drive the highest, outputs. I think you should stick with them. You should do those things first. You should do those things that are more tasking first than things that do not really, make, take a lot of energy or time or stress from you. Then a lot of high value people, they also prioritize their health and their fitness. Yes, they're always working out. And something I've recently started doing, yes, I work out 2 hours every day, except on Saturdays and Sundays. One thing I've started doing is I've started lifting weights. I started carrying my dumbbells. Yes, and I'm toning my arms, and it's the game changer for me. It's really, really working. And then you also need to have unshakable confidence. Yes, you need to have, speak with authority and self-confidence. You need to have that self-assurance that nothing they happen. You command attention in meetings when you speak. People, they believe you, and it's like calling yourself a name. It's the name you call yourself that people will call you as well. If you say, oh, my name is Bold, hey Bold, you know what I mean? So when you come out, you come correct every single time. And then you also need to develop an abundance mindset. Never ever operate from fear or from scarcity. And I still have a lot to share. Honestly, I still have a whole lot to share. And I think I'm going to continue next week, but I don't want to make this too long. It's usually 30 minutes. Oh my goodness, why is the light on? It's usually 30 minutes. So I will just have to stop at this point. But first, I want to say a big thank you to you guys for joining me all the way till the very end. I'm going to put some links in the description. And yes, if you have any question for me, let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to respond to you. And if you need me to do a reset tailored to your specification, also let me know. And don't forget to check out my grants videos. And of course, I'll see you guys next week. Take care of yourselves and bye for now. God bless you. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Let me end the stream. Oh.